Welcome to today's episode of spine-tingling, goosebumps-inducing, and blood-curdling facts that will make your hair stand on end. Get ready to be scared out of your wits as we delve into the terrifying world of horror and explore the dark and disturbing facts that will leave you sleeping with the lights on. Here's a case you don't come by every day. There have been genetically confirmed dwarves, right? Even giants too, but who would have thought there'd be a dwarf giant? How does that even work? This is the story of Adam Rayner and how he lived his life as both a dwarf and a giant.
The dwarf giant.
By the age of 18 years old, Adam Rayner had grown to a whopping height of 4 feet 8 inches, a medically diagnosed dwarf. But this dwarf was different. Although he was below the normal height, his hands and feet were the average male size. This 4'8" dwarf had a size 10 shoe.
But that's not nearly the weirdest oddity Adam would encounter. At the age of 21, when most men stopped growing, Adam went from being a tiny 4'10" all the way up to being 7'1". It was discovered Adam was suffering from acromegaly, a tumor growing on his pituitary gland, releasing excessive growth hormones, the very same condition the tallest man ever, Robert Wadlow, had suffered from. Sadly, these heights come with their drawbacks, big ones, as he lost sight in his right eye and hearing in his left ear in his life at age 51, finally measuring at 7'8" on his deathbed, dying the only person medically diagnosed as a dwarf and a giant.
Missing people are rarely ever found, and with the case of Lars Mittank, there might just never be an end to the case. The first issue is he got lost in a foreign country. The second is everyone seems to think he got killed by the guys he got into a fight with, even though no evidence was ever found.
Where is Lars Mittank? Widely known as one of the most famous missing persons, in 2014, Lars was on a vacation in Bulgaria with his friends. During this trip, he got into a fight with some fans of an opposing football team. He ended up suffering a ruptured eardrum. Due to that injury, and a doctor's request, he was unable to fly back home with his friends. A day after they left for home, he started acting weird. He was recorded via security footage, acting erratic and paranoid. After a night, he called his mother and pleaded to have his credit cards canceled, and that 4 men were coming to kill him. He was last seen at the Varna airport. While talking to a doctor there, a construction worker entered the room and Lars fled from the scene. He climbed up a fence and ran into a field and was never seen again. Those are the facts, but given the mysterious nature, people have come up with their own assumptions, popular ones being head trauma went unnoticed after his fight, leading to psychosis, or possibly him being abducted by the people he mentioned, since nobody ever found him. What do you think happened? Could it have been something else? Either way, the oddities of this case explain why it's so popular. While the search continues, all we can do is hope for a positive outcome.
For fear of her life, Jerry Santaro had to abort her pregnancy because her overly abusive ex-husband was coming to town and she was afraid he would kill her if he found out. What she just wasn't expecting was that she would die either way.
Jerry Santoro, as she lay lifeless, victim of a botched illegal abortion. Meanwhile, Clyde Dixon, the man to accidentally get her pregnant, frantically rushes around the room, gathering the textbook and medical equipment he brought after feeling just as responsible as her for the untimely pregnancy. In Jerry's life before this moment, though as painfully ordinary as she was, had gathered the courage to leave her husband, Sam. Though battered and bruised from years of abuse, Sam Santoro, leaning on the fact he grew up an abused and unloved orphan, took any anger he had out on her. But after fearing the safety for her 2 children, if he had taken the abuse too far, she grabbed her 2 children and moved over 2,000 miles away. After a while, her new man Clyde, who she met working at an institution for the disabled, had been what she had hoped her first husband would be. But when Sam announced he'd be coming to visit his children, Jerry, and her friends at the office, taking the abuse into account, came to the conclusion he would most likely kill her if he found out she was pregnant by another man. And when she told Clyde, that's when he gathered the supplies, and you know how it ended. In 1995, Judy, Jerry's oldest daughter, while opposed to abortion at the time, did get an abortion as a teenager. Certainly hers happening after Roe v. Wade passing made it a bit easier, yet the denial of her mother's choice, just a decade before, left 2 kids without a mom, Clyde in prison for a conspiracy to commit abortion, and an ordinary but loving mom gone before her time. This happened in June of 1964. In now June of 2022, the 50th anniversary of this event, we now see an end to this fundamental right of choice. This is exactly what absolute power looks like. And with power like this, you'll either stand up to keep your fundamental rights now, or wait, and by that time, they'll be taking a fundamental right that you seem to care about.
This is as far as creepy horror movies get, but then this is real life, and this demon would end up taunting this man for years, even after attempted exorcisms proved futile.
This is the longest true horrifying story episode. This episode is worth the time. The story took place in Nador, Morocco in the year 2015. The story was submitted by Ilyas. Back in 2015, Ilyas was an 18-year-old Moroccan Muslim that lived in Norway. One night, Ilyas was back in Morocco visiting family, and he stayed up late watching a movie at home till 3 in the morning. The living room was very warm, so he got up to open the window for fresh air. As he was at the window, being at the 4th floor in that building, he looks down, and the street was dark and empty, but there was one man wearing black from head to toe with a hood covering his face. He wasn't sure why that man was outside at that time. He looked away, but then peeked one last time out of curiosity. When he looked at him again, the man had his hands on a building's wall. He was strangely just feeling the wall, and out of nowhere, the man vanishes through that wall. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief after what he just witnessed. Ilyas swears that there was no door in that spot. It was just physically impossible. He forgets about this after a while, and then flies back to Norway. 6 months later, in Norway, Ilyas experiences his first ever sleep paralysis, which in Islam is known as Jathum. He vividly remembers having a conversation with a dark figure, and his mom also witnessed him speak in his sleep. He woke up after the paralysis with swollen feet and rashes all over his body. They rushed to the ER, and none of the doctors could diagnose what caused his body to react that way. He was finally discharged after treatment, but after that day, Ilyas was never the same person. He always acted differently. He was antisocial. He was distant from people. And his mom always told him that he needed ruqya. A few months later, they fly back to Morocco for the next holiday season. He was always against his mother's ruqya idea. However, he decided to fight his thoughts and do it. He had a cousin that was also suffering, and she visited a raqi in Morocco quite regularly. So they went together with both of their moms. When they reached, they sat down and waited for their session. Ilyas could hear the raqi in the other room, and he felt extremely uneasy and started to sweat. The Quran recitation, the ruqya, the sounds, made him not even want to look at that direction. He was angry. He went outside for a moment to gain back his senses until their turn finally reached. The raqi called them in and started. Ilyas's cousin immediately started reacting horribly when the Quran started. She was screaming so loud. Ilyas started losing senses throughout his entire body. He was sweating, he was unable to move, and he was shouting from fear. He does pray, and he does read Quran, but he was so confused as to why he was screaming. He felt like he was being tortured. The slightest pinch from the raqi felt like it was a knife stab. It was very powerful, and this is where he felt a jinn's presence inside of him. The following night was the most horrific night for Ilyas. For a whole week, the man was not able to sleep alone, and he would get mentally abused by these demons haunting him. Weeks go by. Ilyas started getting demonic thoughts of harming his own family. He hated everyone. When he would look at his own sister, her face would seem distorted to him. He knows these beings are playing with his head. His whole life turned upside down. He would regularly think of harming his own family, but luckily, he never did. A few months later, Ilyas was back in Norway, and life was back to normal. He was relieved that he was in a good state of mind and that the horror was over. At the time, he worked at a local grocery store. After a Christmas celebration at work, which he did not participate in, it was late at night. He was walking one of his colleagues back home from work. She was a young woman and she was scared to walk alone. After they reached outside her place, she asked him, "Where's that other girl that was with us?" "What girl?" Ilyas asked. "There was no one there. It was just you and I." She swore that there was another woman with black hair, pale skin, standing next to him the whole time, staring at Ilyas's colleague with anger. Even though this entity gave Ilyas a break, this jinn was still around, haunting everyone that has intentions towards Ilyas.
They say picture reveals, but no one says how, and in these cases, it might not be outrightly true. Watch this clip and say in the comments section what you first thought of when you see each normal picture before the horrifying backstory kicks in.
Normal looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, Part 24. On June 18, 1964, protesters jumped into a whites-only pool at a hotel in Florida. In an effort to drive them out, the hotel owner started pouring acid into the water. This is the last photo of cave diver John Jones. He took a wrong turn in the famous Nutty Putty Cave and fell down a hole and was stuck upside down for 27 hours until he eventually died due to cardiac arrest. June and Jennifer Gibbons, known as the Silent Twins, were inseparable sisters who eventually stopped speaking to other people. And the twins had an agreement that if one died, the other must start speaking and live a normal life. Shortly after their release from a mental health hospital, Jennifer died of mysterious causes, and June spoke the next day for the first time in over 20 years.
There are facts you hear and you feel like, what did I just hear? It seems too weird or terrifying to hear. One is the fact that we are all 99% nothing, and when you touch people, you are not actually touching them. You are only sensing your atoms repulsing against theirs.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Part 26. Atoms are 99% nothing, which makes us 99% nothing as well. Also, if you come in contact with someone or something, you're not actually touching them. You're simply sensing the repulsion between your atoms and theirs. You can get bed bugs from movie theater seats. In 1386, a French pig was publicly executed for the murder of a child. The pig was given full legal representation and provided human clothes for the trial. A 7-year-old South African girl is more likely to be raped than to receive an education. In the 1950s, many babies in orphanages didn't cry very often because they knew their cries wouldn't be answered. Hans Langseth, the man with the longest beard in history, died when he tripped over it and cracked his neck. The maximum prison sentence in Brazil is 30 years, meaning that mass murderers like Pedro Rodrigues Filho, who killed over 100 people, are walking free today.
That's it for today's horrifying facts. Did you enjoy this trip to the mysterious side? Which of these facts were your best discovery? Let us know in the comments section. Until next time, stay safe and do remember, the truth is often scarier than fiction.